To today's session, Foundations of Leadership. It's going to be presented by Ms. Ashley Smalley. My name is Brett Augustine. I'm a Senior Business Advisor for North Central Texas Small Business Development Centers. We're a leading provider of assistance for small businesses. We are grant funded, which allows us to offer our services at no cost to you. And this session is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel, just in case you don't get all of it today or you jumped in a little bit late. With that said, if you have any questions along the way, please do not hesitate to put them in the questions and chat room at the bottom. And we'll be happy to get to those questions as we go or towards the end whenever Ashley's ready to take questions. Speaking of Ashley, if you don't know her, this is Ashley Smalley. She is she's the founder of Smalley Consulting, a human resources consulting firm. Ashley's a certified human resources professional, trusted consultant, and facilitator in the workplace culture sphere. She uses perspective to equip organizations with every kind of essential skills they need to foster unity within their own teams. And we just want to say thank you so much, Ashley. We're really happy to have you today, and we look forward to the session about Foundations of Leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, Ashley Smalley.
Well, hey, everybody. I hope you're doing okay today. I am going to encourage you as much as possible to engage, ask questions as we go. You can do that in the chat. I won't even hurt my feelings if you interrupt me to ask questions or to give your input. It'll definitely make for a more interesting conversation. I'm excited to talk about leadership. I love leadership. It's the thing that makes my heart beat fast. If I get to choose a book, I will choose a leadership book. I love growing and developing there. I think leadership makes a huge difference in every organization in terms of effectiveness, efficiency, and culture. And so I think it's a critical component, and I'm excited to get to share a few things with you this morning. I worked with a manager one time who believed firmly that because he held a management role, he demanded respect, that he was in fact a leader because he had been put in a leadership position. And he would walk around, and let me paint the picture for you, okay? He was about, I don't know, 5'8", 5'9", slicked back black hair. He had a hairy chest. I know that because he wore his shirt unbuttoned far too low, and he always had on multiple gold chains, and he kind of just strutted around and really looked like he should have been an extra in a mob movie. Okay, so you got the picture. And he would strut around the shop. He was a shop foreman for us, and he would strut around the shop, just kind of barking out orders and making demands and expecting people to do exactly what he said and expecting them to respect him at the same time. And as a result, people did what they had to do to stay out of trouble and to keep earning a paycheck so they could keep feeding their families. But they didn't like him, and they didn't respect him, and they didn't trust him, and they certainly didn't want to follow him anywhere. And isn't that what a leader is? John Maxwell, the great leadership expert who has a bazillion books out, he says, you're a good leader if people are actually following you. Somebody else, and I wish I could remember who it is, said if you are going somewhere and nobody's following you, you're not a leader. You're just on a walk, you know. And so, and that was kind of the result with this shop foreman. Is he was technically their manager, but he was definitely not their leader. He didn't lead the mechanics. He wasn't a leader at all. Nobody followed him out of choice. They obeyed what they had to obey to not lose their job. And there is a huge difference between genuine leadership and holding a position of authority in an organization. Here's the deal. Solid leadership is critical. In order for an organization to reach its full potential, to really get to where we're going and to get there the way we want to get there, we've got to have solid leadership in place. And sadly, so many people feel like their title is sufficient. And I'll tell you, I came from a very blue collar background. I worked in the oil and gas industry, primarily with truck drivers, and really it functioned in such a way that I hold a position and now you just go ahead and fall in line. We might call that command and control leadership. And it was effective for getting work done. but not with any sort of longevity, not with any sort of workplace culture, and not with a good turnover rate, quite honestly. I mean, we saw a very high percentage of turnover because people don't enjoy being treated that way. So we're going to look at a few foundational things today. I think there are 6 of them that you want to really think about as necessary in order to be the kind of leader that people want to follow. And this is where we're going today. We're going to look at these 6 things. We're going to look at the importance of genuine care for the people on your team. We're going to look at the necessity of a consistency of character where people know what to expect out of you. We're going to look at the importance of clarity of purpose, where people know why we're doing what we're doing and where we fit in to that purpose. We're going to talk about the importance of coaching employees and what the difference between coaching and correcting is and when we should do which. And then we're going to look at the importance of being a champion of the organization and not just ourselves as leaders. And then we're going to talk about creating a mentality of service and really thinking about servant leadership. So that's the roadmap for where we're going. If you're type A like me and you like to know where we're going and how we're going to get there and when we should arrive, that's the plan. And y'all feel free to hijack it if you want to, and we'll go wherever you want to go. But that's what I've got outlined for us today. So let's dive in. The first thing that we're going to look at is the importance of genuine care. And I'm going to ask some questions. If you're on the call with us, please give me some feedback. When have you seen an employer really care well for an employee? Now that can be you, or that could be someone that you've previously worked for, or somebody that, lives in your house that's had a really great experience. But when have you seen genuine care, not for necessarily the work that they do, but for the employee as a whole human? When have you seen an employer care really well for an employee?
Never.
Did you say never?
That's what I heard from somebody as well.
Okay.
Yes. And it's okay to have that response. Never is probably something there. I also have all the time in current job role. So
Yeah, and really, if you're in the workplace, that's the spectrum. Depending on who your employer is, you've got absolutely no care whatsoever. You're a cog in this wheel, and I want you to perform, and that's really all I'm concerned with, all the way to the opposite end of the spectrum, where it's, what do you need? How can I serve you? How can I make it possible for you to live life to its fullest? And it's everywhere in between. I have seen some really great shows of genuine care in my career. For me personally, I was having my second child. I was out on maternity leave, and I actually got a raise while I was out on paid maternity leave, because it was time, it was in the cycle where that would have happened. And even though I was out on leave, they went ahead and moved forward with that increase in pay, which was such a blessing to me as I was trying to figure out how to pay for daycare for a second kid when I went back. I've also seen lots of people when I go and have these conversations in real time, in person with people, I'll ask this question. There are lots of great examples, like, somebody has a baby and there's a meal train set up, and they just show up with meals while these new parents try to figure out what it looks like to keep this human alive. Or someone passes away, and so they show up to the funeral, and they bring a meal, and they send cards, and they do all of these sorts of things. And there are things that as leaders we do for the people that work for us because we care about them. And my caution to you is that really needs to be genuine. If you're forcing it, if you're doing it because you're supposed to, there's something to that. I'm grateful for that, I guess. But if it's not genuine, people will see through it if you're just checking a leadership box. And so I think it's important as leaders for us to really focus on the people who work for us as a whole person that is more than a cog in the wheel, that has interests and responsibilities and other things that they enjoy outside of the workplace, that they've got things going on. We've all got different family responsibilities, whether those are the people that live in our house or the people who raised us or whatever, that come into play at different parts of life. And as an employer, if I can make it possible for my people to be able to be present in those personal needs when they need to, they're going to be so much much more loyal to the organization because they feel genuinely cared for. So we want to be looking for opportunities to show genuine care for the whole person. There are about 3 ways I could think of right off the bat that are great ways to show this care, just very practically. And one of those is going to be patience. What are some things that y'all could think of that we would need to be patient with employees about? Can you think of anything off the top of your head?
Family matters always, patient when
Of
it comes
course.
to that.
Particularly when it calls you away from work, when there are deadlines and things that need to be done. And I know that in my own life, my family is my first responsibility and my first priority. And I suspect that that's true for many others. So when those family things come up, being patient with them either not being present as much as we need them to be, or being patient with, maybe the quality of work is not quite where we would want it to be. I know when my dad was very ill for about 18 months before he passed away, and I was in and out of the hospital with him a lot and trying very hard to continue doing my job well, but always kind of having my mind somewhere else. And my employer was very patient in terms of, you go and you take care of your family, and we will take care of it here until you get back. And what a blessing that was, and what a sense of loyalty that built, because that I felt so genuinely cared for. We also might need to be patient when we've got employees that are learning new things. You think about any new system, any new change, any new software, there's a learning curve. And particularly if we are the ones who felt like we got it really quickly and we picked right up on it, and we feel like we're just having to keep answering the same questions over and over, that can be a challenge to our patients. But when we choose to be patient, we are communicating care for an individual. And so that's a huge, huge thing. We can also be patient with people who think and work differently than we do. So I confess to you, I am very detail oriented. I think in terms of strategy and spreadsheets and color coding, and just very structured. And I work with a woman who is the polar opposite of that. She is big picture and very flexible and very fluid, and she'll think she of something she needs to do and she's off doing it, and we could absolutely drive each other crazy. But we choose to be patient with each other instead, because we understand in those differences, we are making a stronger team. I work for a guy who is the same way, very big picture. And he will say, Ashley, I need us to take care of this. Like one day he said, on Sunday, I need you just to make these things happen. And I was like, I need a lot more information. I need to know why this is happening. I need to know how you want it executed. I need to know the timeline. And he's going, I don't care. Just make it happen. And that could be very frustrating for us. Gratefully, we understand that our differences make us much better together. And so we're patient. He's made a very deliberate decision that he's going to be patient with my need for all the detail. And I'm doing the best I can to be patient with the fact that he doesn't have all the detail. And so that's a great way that we can show genuine care, is to be patient just in those different thinking styles and processing styles. Empathy is another very important way for us to show genuine care for the people around us and the people on our teams. If you were on the session that we did earlier this month on Unity Begins With You, we talked a little bit about empathy and the importance of experiencing the highs and lows that people go through in personal life and professional life, and that is still absolutely true. And the reason that's important for unity on a team is because it's showing genuine care and it's building a foundational relationship with the people that we work with. So we definitely want to keep doing that, looking for the things that they are experiencing that are positive, births of childs and marriages and purchasing a first home, promotions and big sales and having a great month, or a good project that got completed, and finding ways to celebrate those. We also want to look for, what are the lows? Is there a family issue? Is there a death in the family? Is the employee themselves personally ill with a chronic condition? Did a project not go well with a client? Did we miss a sales target? These sorts of things, and figuring out how to walk with them through those low times. It really does. It builds a loyalty and a trust on the team because people feel cared for. The other thing that I'd like to mention in terms of empathy is often we miss the chance to be empathetic because we're very actively being judgmental or critical. I think a critical nature or a judgmental spirit is one of the biggest things that gets in the way of us being empathetic to others. There was a guy named Andy Stanley who said, "Where you sit determines where you stand." And what he means is where you're situated, where your background is, the way you grew up, the things you went through, what your socioeconomic status is, what your race is, your gender, your religion, all of these things make you who you are, and they uniquely position you to see any issue that's coming from that position. Well, the problem is on our teams, we're not all positioned, we're not all situated in the same places. And often what we will do is be judgmental or critical of the people on our teams who think differently than we do, that are coming from a different perspective or a different position. And we tend to shut them off or cut them out, or really just kind of be mean-spirited about the fact that we don't agree on how we should attack the problem or what the issue is at hand. Empathy says, I'm gonna get out of this position that I'm situated in, this place that I am, and I'm gonna go walk over here, and I'm gonna stand where you're positioned, and I'm gonna look at it from there, and I'm gonna try to see it from your perspective. When we do this, it makes a huge difference in understanding, and what that communicates to somebody when we're willing to try to see things from their perspective is it communicates to them, my perspective is not the only one that matters. Yours does too, because you matter to me as well. You remember when COVID happened and then the vaccines came out and everybody had really, really hot sports opinions about that. I'm not here to talk about one position or another. What I want to say is I was positioned in a completely different place than my coworkers were. Many of them had a perspective that they didn't agree with that particular course of treatment or prevention for COVID. And I was situated in a completely different position because I had a dad who was going through kidney failure, and my husband and I were both donor matches, and we wanted to do whatever we could to make sure we were healthy to try to save his life. And so what I'm saying is everybody has a really strong opinion based on where they're situated. And empathy will communicate that you matter and your perspective matters. And we will move from where I'm situated to go stand where you are just to try to see it. We may not still agree, but that shows that the other person matters. So in our leadership, empathy is a huge thing that we can offer to the people on our teams. The other thing that we can do to show genuine care is offer generosity. Often when I ask in a group, what are some things we could be generous with? I get lots of great answers. Things like, we could be generous with our time. We can make sure that our people know that we are available to them, that we will make time for them even if we don't have time for them. And we give them an opportunity to bring their concerns or to ask their questions. And we don't make them feel rushed or unimportant. They'll say we can be generous with flexibility of schedule, right? When those family things come up or whatever, that we can really be flexible in terms of what we allow them to do. Or, okay, your kid has a sporting event, absolutely go. You can make up the time later, or as long as your stuff's done, you're free to go. Oh, or you had a really big project that caused you to work over the weekend, by all means, take next Friday off. And offering flexibility where flexibility is available and possible, that goes a really long way towards showing genuine care for the whole person, and that their life is more than just what's happening in this organization on Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, or whatever the hours are. People will say, sharing knowledge, being generous with knowledge and information is a great way to show genuine care, because it communicates, I want you to have everything you need to be able to do the best job here that you can. I want you to be prepared. I want you to be stretched past what you know right now, so that you're ready to move forward with the next step in this organization or the next organization, whatever the case may be. And then, of course, generosity financially is huge. It speaks volumes to people. I remember I worked in HR for a long time. I started out in HR as a benefits manager. So when everybody else was rolling their eyes because open enrollment was coming around and it was time to talk about insurance, I was totally nerding out on how much I loved like getting the whole thing together. And because we were a 24/7 operation, those open enrollment meetings had to happen at shift change, which was 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m. So 2 different times and then in multiple locations. And so for a week or week and a half, I hardly ever saw my family because I needed to travel to do those meetings. And I'll never forget when the CFO just walked in and just kind of without any fanfare whatsoever, just laid a check on my desk and said, "Hey, I want you to know we've noticed all of your hard work." And it wasn't an exorbitant amount of money, but it was enough to communicate that they actually valued the extra work that I had put in. And that spoke volumes to me about their care and their awareness for me. So generosity financially when you can be, but there are other things you can do besides bonuses. I mean, if you're in local government or education or some nonprofit, that's not always an option. But sometimes you can build into your budget an opportunity to get drinks and snacks for staff meetings, or where you can have little spot gift cards that you hand out for a job well done. So be creative and think about things that you can do financially to be generous with your people. Would anybody have anything else that you would share that would be a great way to show genuine care for people in our leadership roles? Okay, then let's move on. We're going to talk about next the consistency of character. Now, I don't know about you. Have you ever worked with somebody who was unpredictable?
Actually, there was somebody who wanted to add time
So sorry.
flexibility. It just took them a while to type it, I think,
Okay,
in the
great. What did
chat.
it say?
Time flexibility,
Oh, yes.
showing, yeah.
And I'm assuming you mean in terms of when the shift starts, when the shift ends, when the hours get worked, that sort of thing. Absolutely, that gives such a sense of empowerment to the employees that I can kind of control and structure my day. I remember when the pandemic first hit and you're working from home, and I was homeschooling kids and everything at the same time. To have that freedom to be able to go, start at 5 a.m., work until the kids got up, get them through their school, then go back and finish up the day was a huge blessing. And the truth is, a pandemic is not the only time that we need that flexibility. And so, absolutely, it's a really great idea. Thank you for that addition.
Well said.
With consistency of character, so I asked, have you ever worked with somebody who was unpredictable? If you did, you probably have their face pictured in your mind right this second. I want you to think about how did that person make you feel? I'll tell you a story about a guy that I worked with, and then I'll tell you how I felt, and then you tell me if you have any additional feelings. But he worked remotely. He was our VP of finance. He worked remotely, and he was just so unpredictable that when my cell phone rang and I saw his name pop up on the top, I thought, oh no, I have no idea what I'm about to get. I'm either going to get chatty Kathy, who just has everything to say about nothing, is going to talk my ear off for the next 30 minutes that I'll never get back and about nothing, or I was going to get the guy who absolutely berated me, who cussed me up one side and down the other, yelled and screamed, normally about stuff that I had nothing to do with. Same guy. I was having trouble with the accounting team. And so he said, "Ashley, I've had it. I'm coming into town. I'm going down there. And here's what I'm going to tell them. I'm going to tell them this, and I'm going to tell them that, and I'm going to tell them this." And I walked him through, what I thought was the appropriate way to address that information, asked him to do a really nice job, and said, "Let me know how it goes." Well, I never heard back from him. So I called him to say, "How did it go?" And he said, "Well, I got to be honest, I kind of threw you under the bus a little bit." And I said, "HR said this, and HR said that, and HR said this." Okay, so you got a picture of what I'm dealing with. Let me tell you how he made me feel. So frustrated, so stinking frustrated. I didn't want to work with him. I didn't want to have to deal with him. When I left that organization, he is one of very few people that I didn't miss because I never knew what to expect. Does anybody else have any other feelings? I never have anybody say, "You know what, it makes me," their unpredictability really makes me want to spend more time or work on more projects with them. Nobody ever says that to me because the truth is inconsistency results in a break in trust. I don't don't know if I can trust you as far as I can pick you up and throw you. I have no idea what to expect with you. John Maxwell said, how does a leader build trust? By consistently exemplifying competence, connection, and character. And that's really what we're looking at here. We talked about connection just a second ago with genuine care, and now we're talking about character. We've got to make sure that we can commit to a consistency of character that won't take our team on a roller coaster. See, the truth is there is this mirror neuron thing that happens in our brain where we mimic whatever we see. So if you've ever lived with a teenage girl, I live with a teenage girl right now, and the emotions are really big. And I find that I mirror those emotions. Well, the same is true in the workplace. And as a leader in the organization, everybody is hypersensitive and hyper aware of where we are, where we're coming from, and what our emotional state is. So if we are a very emotional person, and I'm not saying emotions are bad, I have quite a few of them myself. What I'm saying is we want to make sure that our highs and our lows don't take our people on a roller coaster because it makes it very unpredictable for them. We want leaders who people can look at them and say, I know what to expect. What you see is what you get. It's consistent. I can count on it day in and day out. And that's the kind of leader that we want to be as well. So some ways that we can really focus on our consistency are to make sure that our words and our actions match. If we tell somebody that we're going to do something, we should follow through with it and do it. And if something changes circumstantially where we can't follow through, we should circle back and communicate why that changed. Because it's okay that we didn't follow through as long as we've communicated the why and we haven't left it hanging where it looks like we're a hypocrite or it looks like we lack follow through that would allow people to count on us. So we want to make sure that our words and our actions match. We also want to make sure that our verbal communication and our written communication match. When I was in my very first leadership position, my first manager role, I'd kind of just got thrown into it, and I never had been trained really on do's and don'ts in the leadership position. And I had 4 employees that reported to me. I was in my early 20s. 3 of the 4 employees were old enough to be my parent, and one of them I graduated from high school with her son, and she was my admin assistant. And so she was consistently late, which was a big problem for me because she's the one that answers the phones and meets the customers as they walk in the door. But I was afraid to say anything. I didn't know how to address it. Just in my naivete, I didn't know how to address it. And I thought, oh, performance reviews are coming up in a minute. And so when her review came around, I addressed punctuality. And she said, Ashley, it would have meant so much to me for you to have told me ahead of time so that I could have worked on it before we had to put it on the review. Well, of course she would have. And if I had been thinking about it from her perspective, that's what I would have wanted as well. The problem is I was inconsistent. My lack of verbal communication indicated I was totally fine with the time of day that she was showing up. So when it showed up in writing that I wasn't, that was a breakdown for her. And if we had not had a relationship already established where she knew that wasn't my normal character, it really could have impacted our relationship negatively. And she was very gracious, and I learned a very good lesson, and we move on. But we want to make sure our verbal and our written are consistent. We want to make sure that we're consistent throughout the organization. So we want to make sure that the way that we are talking to the highest level people in the organization is exactly how we're talking to the entry level newest hire, that our demeanor, that the level of respect that we show is the same across the board. If you've ever worked for a manager who picked favorites, you know what it feels like. It's uncomfortable for everyone. It's uncomfortable for the person who got picked as the favorite because they know and they don't know how to get out of it, and people give them a hard time about it. And if you're not the favorite, you know you don't feel like you get any of the perks that the other people do, and it creates issue with morale. So we've got to make sure in our leadership that we are being consistent across the board with everyone in the organization, that we don't present one face to the people who show up that appear to be very important and a different face to those who might not look as valuable, because that's certainly not the case, and we don't want to give that perception. We want to make sure that we're treating everyone on the team fairly and consistently in terms of discipline. That if it's not okay for employee X to do this, then it's not okay for employee Y to do this. If I'm going to allow this schedule flexibility for employee A, I've got to allow it for employee B as well, and just being consistent across the board in that way as well. We also want to make sure that we are leading by example with our interaction with others. So if I'm communicating to my team that it's unacceptable for them to act in a certain way, that's not what we do here. But then they see me interact with someone else in the organization and do the very thing I just told them we don't do around here. I've created a break in trust and in understanding in terms of what are the norms and what are the expectations. So we want to make sure in the way that we interact with others, in the way that we go about completing our work, and in the way that we connect with other people in the organization, that we are leading by example and following through on the things that we are saying verbally to our team that matter to us. John Maxwell said, trust is the foundation of leadership. And I submit to you, trust cannot be built if consistency is not present. We've got to make sure that people know what to expect of us. Any thoughts or questions that you want to add on consistency of character?
We have a great one in the chat I want to share with you real quick and see what you think about providing a safe place consistently as well. So that they feel comfortable coming to you, I imagine is what they're saying.
Absolutely.
But providing a safe place.
And you're exactly right. Where you know that you can approach me today about an issue that you've got just the same as you're going to be able to approach me tomorrow. There are some managers that you work for that one day they're open door and really readily willing to listen, and then the next time it's like, why are you even here? And so you're exactly right. Making sure that there's consistency in terms of our availability and our willingness to listen, and being a place where people know they can bring their ideas, their thoughts, and their concerns without fear of some sort of retribution or being made to feel stupid. Absolutely. Consistency there is critical. Great point. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you for that question. We appreciate you. Keep putting them in the chat as we need to, as we continue.
Thank you so much, y'all. Okay, clarity. We want to talk about a clarity of purpose. This is critical in a leadership role because I'm talking about organizational purpose, and not a jargony mission statement that it's going to look good on a wall or a t-shirt or a website. But I'm talking about really getting down to the specific reason that your organization exists. I mean, why? What is the purpose behind it actually being there? Employees desperately want to know that they, at the heart of what they're doing in life, right? We spend most of our time at work, not at home or doing fun things. And so we want to know that the time we're spending here in this organization, it contributes to something grand and aspirational and important. And really the truth is all organizations exist in some facet, in some way, to make people's lives better. We're selling something or we're offering a service that's going to improve people's lives or their ability to do their jobs or their ability to perform. The question is, as leaders, and particularly very high level leaders in an organization, are we tapping into those aspirational qualities in the way that we talk to our people about what the organization is doing? Are we really digging into the why behind it? Often organizations know what they do because they do them all day, and they know how they do them, or at least most people know how they do them, but very few know why. And why gives us a competitive advantage, but it also gives us the opportunity to lead people well, where they feel like, man, the thing I'm doing every day, it really, really matters. So when you think about this, think about communicating a clear vision, a clear purpose to your people, where you know why you do what you do. So when you're talking to your employees, every employee in the organization should know, why do we do what we do? What's the why behind it? And it's going to take a little while to dig down and really figure out why do we exist? Especially if you just started a business because you saw a need and you met a need and you never really gave thought to that. And then the business gained momentum. And then here you go and you're down the road and you're like, oh, okay. But as I'm hiring people, they want to be part of something bigger than themselves. So we've really got to communicate to them, okay, this is why we do what we do. Simon Sinek is a great voice in the leadership space. And he has actually a book called Start with Why. And he says, you start with why, and then you talk about how, and then you talk about what. But the why gives people something that they can sink their teeth into, something that they can connect with, something that they want to be a part of. In leadership, so much of what we do is inspiring others to step into the best version of themselves they can be and this greater purpose that we have in this organization. So we really want to be thinking about why do we do what we do and communicating that to our people. And we want to make sure they know why the thing we do matters. And we also want them to know why they're an integral part of it. So often, if you aren't in the main function of the business, it's often easy to feel like the thing I'm doing here doesn't really matter. Really great leaders can look at any position in the organization and say, without you, this thing would fall apart. Without your position, without your role, we can't operate at maximum level. We need you. All the way down to a janitor keeping a facility in good working order where people can move about freely without worry about injury. Slips, trips, and falls is the number one cause of workplace injury. I mean, all of these things, we can empower every position in an organization to feel like we couldn't do this without you. And that's part of our job as leaders, is to help people not just see why we exist, but why we need them in the organization. Communication is huge. I've heard it said that a leader's primary function is to be an over communicator, where we are putting things out in front of people all the time. Once you've gone through the exercise of figuring out why you exist, you want to make sure people actually know it and believe it. And there have been studies done, and on the conservative end, on the very low end, would indicate that people have to hear stuff 7 times before they really hear it and retain it, and 14 times before they even believe it. And I've heard that as high as triple those numbers. So what that means is, as a leader, when we are just sick to death of saying something, our people are just now starting to really hear us and believe what we're saying. It's in the repetition of communication that people go, oh, they were serious about that. Oh, all right, I guess I got to start paying attention. And I don't mean just redundant, repetitive communication where I'm saying the same words, where I've written out my little blurb and I say it the same time the same way every time we get together. No, I'm communicating in it different ways, every possible way that I can give it to you, whether that's in writing, whether that's verbally, whether that's in a meeting, whether that's on our website, whether that is not just my voice, but other voices in the organization that can share that same purpose. We've got to make sure that we are doing the work of actually communicating that purpose and that vision that we've got. There is a difference between knowledge and understanding. So I can know what you're telling me, but I don't understand how it applies to me or how to apply it in my job. And so as the leader, we can't just give them knowledge. We have to help them make the connection in terms of how then does this apply, and how can I apply it in the work that I'm doing. So repeated communication is going to be key in that. And in-person communication, obviously, is the best way for you to be able to read the room and pick up on their nonverbal cues. Were they confused about that? Was something unclear? Is there something that I need to answer? A lot of times asking questions is a great way to figure out where your team is and where you need to go back and re-communicate things that might have been missed, so that they get to a level of understanding rather than just possessing knowledge. A gift that we can give to our people is a singleness of purpose. It helps give clarity in terms of what we are doing. So if we can come up with a singleness of purpose that we can attach all of our work tasks to, it will help us feel more accomplished. If you think about it in terms of your own life, I'll give you me as an example. I am a wife, a mom, a business owner, an employee, a friend, a member of a community, I'm balancing 5 or 6 different purposes all the time. Different things, different areas and arenas that I'm attached to. And it can be really, really exhausting, especially if I think I'm supposed to be living out this purpose in this area and this purpose in this area and this purpose in this area. But if I get it all boiled down to where I have a singular purpose for my life, I can live that out in every single arena. And so if I didn't get everything checked off the list in every area of life today, I can still feel accomplished as having lived out my purpose. Well, as business owners and as leaders, what we can do is give that same gift to our employees. Okay, every task that you're doing, it attaches to our purpose here. If you aren't sure how, let me paint the picture for you. Let me show you how that report that you have to generate that you absolutely think is unnecessary and nobody's reading. Let me tell you, I am reading it. And here's what it helps me see in the bigger purpose of what we're doing and helping us accomplish our organizational objectives. So connecting to a singleness of purpose is huge. The other gift that we can give our people as a leader is to take our organizational purpose and translate it into personal purpose for them as well, because people desperately want their lives to matter. Herb Kelleher, who was the co-founder and former CEO of Southwest Airlines, said, the important thing is to take the bricklayer and make him understand that he's building a home and not just laying bricks. And that's really what we're talking about, is where I help you see that the thing that you're doing day in and day out is bigger than just the thing you're doing day in and day out. So clarity of purpose is huge, and helping people find not just the organizational purpose, but their personal purpose as well is a gift that we can give as leaders that really is hard for anyone else to give our people. Any thoughts you would have on clarity or questions that you have about that before we move on to the next thing?
Ashley, I think that teaching the bricklayer what they're doing or going for, that is just so huge. I really don't think that can be underemphasized or overemphasized.
I agree with you, and I wish that I would have been the one who said it, because it's brilliant. It really, really is, and I would take credit for it, but that seems wrong. So yeah, Herb Kelleher is a brilliant leader. If you ever want to do some study and just dive down into what does it look like to really lead an organization well, everything that you read about him is so strong. People loved working for him and built loyalty that most cannot replicate. So he would be a great one to model yourself after. All right.
Actually, I have a quick question. I apologize to interrupt.
You're good.
I was just thinking about our clients who are sole proprietors, individuals like yourself who might work from home, who have clients that are technically their team. However, they are the vendor for those clients. My husband is one of those people. So how would they search perhaps for clarity? Certainly asking clients, their vendors, what is the end date for the project? What would you like to see at the end of this project? How would you like me to communicate with you? But how would internally you find clarity in you as a single business owner, the only person at the beginning? How would you kind of search for that on your own?
And that's exactly where I'm at. I'm a sole proprietor as well. It's me. I'm this, what do they call it? Chief cook and bottle washer. I'm doing all of it, right? And I need to know. I need to know why I exist. So one of the very first things I did was sit down. I read a book called Do What Matters Most by Rob Schallenberger. And it's where you really think about the priorities of your full life, not just your work life. And what are you trying to accomplish with life? And you build you build your life, your schedule, your priorities around that focus. And one of the great things that came out of that was that I desperately needed to spend some time identifying my organizational purpose for me. Because when I know what my purpose is, that helps me say yes and no to the right things. It helps make sure that I'm aligning my business where it needs to go. But then, so I outsource most of my social media and marketing because I can't get to it. There's not enough. And I desperately need Carly to know what I'm about, what we're trying to accomplish, what the purpose is behind it. So I'm talking to her about those things just like I would if she was a W-2 employee who worked for me. And making sure that she knows Smalley Consulting, we're about unity. We're about building stronger relationships. We're about making people be able to enjoy their work because they enjoy the people with whom they work. And everything we're doing is geared that direction. And so I think it's just, it's, you've got to identify it. You've got to, it seems silly. I'll be honest. It seems like it's just me. I kind of know what I'm about. I kind of know what I'm doing. Let's just go. But actually taking the time when when it is just one to identify what those things are. One, it helps give direction for where we're going with this business, but also it gives us those tapes that we need kind of running in our mind, that they're coming out then naturally in all of our conversations with everyone that we interact with. And then we're empowering them as you're connected to my organization, come be part of what we're doing. That's where we're headed. Does that answer your question?
Yes, no, that's brilliant. I find, like I said, just in talking to my husband on a daily basis, he's got a lot of players in the companies that he does business with. And sometimes he gets really frustrated by there's too many people coming at him with information, deadlines, trying to set priorities of which project should come first and et cetera. And he gets very frustrated. And so internally, he has to stop and write out what his questions are, what his concerns are, and then prioritize and reach out to the head of the projects. What is my priority? I want to be respectful of your time and my time as technically he's a contractor for them. So, but like you said, being by yourself, you kind of get into your own head and you don't stop and go, okay, hold on a minute. I'm providing a service, yet this is my company. So no, that was brilliant. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, good. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
If there were no other notes in the chat about clarity, then let's move on. Is there? No? Okay. All right. Moving on to coaching. If I were to ask you, what do you think the difference between coaching and correction is? Would anybody have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Coaching drives you towards the goals, whereas correction simply takes the thing that you're doing wrong and makes you turn in a different direction for the moment rather than the overall goal, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Coaching is going to be very, very relational. It's going to be very ongoing. It's going to take on an informal look sometimes, just, kind of seeing where you are and pointing you toward where we're headed before there's a problem, before something needs to be corrected. Coaching is going to be very advisory and encouraging and motivating and kind of helping you develop so that we don't get to the place where we've got to do a lot of correcting. Correcting is exactly what you said. Hey, you messed up. Now we got to do it differently. And there is absolutely a place for that because the workplace is full of people and none of us are perfect. And we are absolutely going to make mistakes that need to be corrected. But often in workplaces, especially if it's all you've ever seen modeled, we just wait till there's a problem. We say that there's a problem. We demand that you fix the problem. It becomes very formal. There's a written disciplinary action. We make sure it's documented. It's punitive in nature. And then we move on and we hope that the thing is fixed. Coaching helps people see that there is more that they're capable of more than they think. And it gets to a place where trust is built because you're not waiting for me to mess up to tell me. You're actually helping me improve along the way. You go back to the terrible job I did with my admin assistant. I should have been coaching her to help her see why her punctuality was necessary, why I needed her on time, instead of waiting and punitively putting it in her performance review. And so we want to make sure that we are as much as possible helping people, and coaching is going to tie it to the why all the time, right? Like this is the end goal. This is where we're trying to go. Here's why, and here's why I need your help getting there. Coaching also helps employees begin to be able to self-correct, to become more self-reliant and take more initiative in the organization because they're not having to wait on you to micromanage and give them every single detail of every single thing that they need to do, because they begin to feel more and more capable and they feel like they've got your support as their coach to go forth and prosper. Coaching helps people contribute more effectively to the company. And because now I feel like I've got some level of autonomy and initiative, and I can now bring my creativity and I can bring my suggestions. And you've created this environment by your coaching style that allows people to bring what they've got to the table. They're going to be much more satisfied with their job and with their life, and your retention is going to be much, much better. Now, a lot of times when we talk about coaching, everybody will kind of feel like it's like all rah-rah cheerleading and just real touchy-feely and feel good, and that it's the opposite of micromanagement, and that you should never tell your employees what to do. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying don't micromanage, just coach as an excuse to not offer accountability. Like, that's not what we're talking about. But I'm talking about where I'm seeing what's going on. I'm seeing kind of the pattern that you're tracking in, and I'm coaching you through it. I'm giving you a long-term end goal that we're trying to reach before we get to a place where there's been a mistake and a correction actually needs to be made. A coach is going to go, here's the goal. Here's what we're trying to accomplish. Now you go figure out how to do it. You've got freedom and flexibility to figure out how to reach the goal, instead of saying, here are the 1,800 steps you need to take to get to this one goal. And this is obviously the only way to get there. A coach is also, though, going to absolutely hold you accountable for the things that have been set before you. So it's not like, here, go forth and whatever you come up with is fine. No, here's where we're headed. This is what I need you to accomplish. You figure out how to do it. Ask me questions. I'm going to coach you through it along the way, but I'm not going to put my thumb on you and dictate that it's got to be done exactly how I said. It opens up opportunity for creativity and for flexibility, and for people to begin taking some ownership in the work that they're doing. When employees are micromanaged, the story that they are hearing is, I'm not capable of doing more than exactly what my manager gives me to do. And when we coach instead, and we say, okay, here's where we're headed, let's see what you can come up with, the story that they hear is, oh, maybe I'm capable of more than I thought. My boss definitely seems to think so. And so we want to make sure that we're not just trying to be punitive. I worked in as I mentioned, oil and gas environment. It is very punitive in nature. You know, you mess up, there's a very formal, like your verbal disciplinary action is documented to your file. Then there's a written disciplinary action. Then there's the suspension, then the termination. And sometimes if it's bad enough, you're just gone. And absolutely, as an HR professional, I'll tell you, there's a time and a place for that. But it is so easy to get into a rhythm in an organization where we're just trying to slap you on the wrist with a ruler, instead of coaching you and helping you understand why the thing is wrong. So often we're like, that was the wrong action to take. Here's a disciplinary warning, instead of going like, okay, that's probably not the approach I would have taken. Here's why. What do you think? And give them a chance to give some feedback into, oh yeah, that probably was a better approach. I just didn't think about it. What that also does is opens up the door. Like the commenter who was saying, you give them a safe space. It opens up the door where, if I'm openly communicating with you about how we're accomplishing things and why, I'm also then giving you opportunity to share your thoughts with me and ask questions and offer suggestions that I might not have thought of. And so coaching has a much more relational feel and much less punitive feel, while at the same time still offering accountability for follow through. Phil Jackson, when he coached the Bulls, he expected certain things out of his players. And if he didn't get it, there were consequences for that. But he also gave them the freedom to make a real-time game decision. I mean, you think Phil Jackson was calling in every play to Michael Jordan to tell him what to run? No, there was freedom and flexibility for people to step into greatness and live that out. But if in those efforts you missed the mark, there was accountability for that. And so that's kind of what we want to be thinking about in terms of coaching. We want to coach first and coach often, and correct only when we must. And there is absolutely a time for that. But even in our correction, there can be a genuine care, a kindness, a gentleness in the correction that lends itself to a more coach focused mentality than just let's just write them up and call it done. And so we want to make sure that that's kind of where the thoughts are there. Does anybody have anything that you would add in terms of coaching versus correction? Anything in the chat, Brett?
Not at this time. That doesn't mean they're not typing away at this very
Okay.
moment.
Well, I'm going to move on. And if something pops up, you just interrupt me, please, sir.
You bet.
All right, let's talk about championing the organization. So as a manager, as a leader, as a business owner, our number one job is to represent the organization well. And that's true with our customers as well as with our employees. One of the trickiest things that I've seen, and it happens a lot in family owned businesses, but certainly in other areas as well. People will step into a position of power after they've been a peer, and it gets really wonky trying to lead the people, the friends or the family that you've worked with as an equal that you are now managing. It's the same is true when your business partner is your spouse or you've got your kids working for you. It gets a little wonky trying to find the balance there. And so when you are in business mode with that leadership hat on, the organization and its needs are where we're really putting our focus and our effort, not necessarily on making sure our buddies are still pleased with us. One of the ways that we can champion the organization is that when we make a decision, whether that's from the top or somewhere in the middle, we make a decision. Let's not just hand down a mandate. Let's not just say, hey, here's the rule, follow it. Instead, let's try to explain the decision. And sometimes owners of businesses, we feel like I shouldn't have to explain it. This is my business. You work for me. Let me just tell you, and you go ahead and take care of it. But remember, we're trying to build and foster an organization where there's trust and loyalty and retention and a culture where people actually want to stay and work. So instead of just handing down mandates, the why comes into play here as well. When I can explain why we went with this decision, why it's best for the largest number of people, or why it's best for the organization. People may not agree with the decision, but they will certainly appreciate the fact that you took the time to explain where you're coming from. And that helps them be more bought into what they're doing, even if they're not 100% on board with the decision itself. When people are frustrated with a decision that we have made, when they have questions about a decision that we have made, we've got to entertain those. We've got to make sure that we are not just dismissing them. We're not just saying like, that's just the way it is. Just suck it up, buttercup, and get on about it. But trying to make sure that we are trying to understand where they're coming from. When they bring frustrations, when they bring questions, that we're answering them while at the same time still communicating thoroughly from a company perspective that this is what is best for the biggest part of the organization. And I know it's not ideal for everyone, but this is where we had to land, and really hope that you're going to be able to be supportive, but they're not going to be if we're not taking time to entertain their questions and frustrations, and couple that with genuine care for that employee. Our employees often watch us and model what we're doing more than what we're saying. So if in the organization we have a very me first attitude, sometimes small business owners, we're kind of like, I'm running the show. This whole thing's about me. It's all about me. When we're me focused, the people who are following us will be me focused as well, and it will begin to create division in the organization. But when we as the leaders, we're modeling a company first attitude, we're about serving our customers and our clients, we're about building relationships in the community, or whatever your why is. When we're modeling that kind of company first attitude, the people who are following us will follow suit there as well, building trust and loyalty, and also an organization of people that'll follow us wherever we go because they're bought into what we're doing. a communication of a champion is huge. Whenever we've got to communicate something to all the employees, we want to make sure first, do I fully understand what I need to communicate? If you've ever gone off half-cocked, like just enough to be dangerous, you know what it's like to get in a room full of employees and things go sideways. So we want to make sure that I fully understand what I need to communicate in its entirety, that I have my mind wrapped around what needs to be communicated. And also I've anticipated what questions are they going to ask? What concerns are they going to have, so that I'm prepared to address those really before they ever have to ask them. What that does is say, hey, I've thought about what it's going to feel like from where you're standing. And so let me go ahead and address that for you. Make sure that we are giving the why. Again, I can't say that enough. Why is so huge. The other thing is, are we communicating it in a positive way? So when you're thinking about how am I going to roll this information out, I'm not necessarily talking about putting a positive spin on things in a way that's disgenuine, but really thinking about, okay, what's the best time and the best place that I can deliver this message? What are the words I could choose that would make this more palatable? Is there a way that I can offer this up so that people can receive it for what it is, instead of being frustrated by the things that they're hearing on the front end? Think all the way through how you can present it so that it shines a bright light on the move of the organization. I'll just tell you right now, people hate change. They don't love it. It's uncomfortable. We always get through it, but there are some of us who are more resistant to it than others. And if you are able to show me the positive side of the change that's happening, or the new way that we're going to do things, I'm going to be way, way better positioned to take it and run with it than I will if you just say, hey, here's the new thing, go do it. The other thing when we're communicating is making sure we're thinking about who all needs the information all the way across the organization. Does everybody need it? Do only certain players need it? Who up and down the line needs it? Are there key vendors who need this information? And really be thinking about the full gamut. There is a temptation, especially when we're busy, and especially when we're doing all that we can do in a 24-hour window, to only do the bare minimum. And if we are going to be leaders that people want to follow, we are going to resist the temptation to do the bare minimum. And we're going to make sure we're doing the most so that people can be bought into the things that we are doing. It's going to require extra thought, extra effort, extra time to communicate like a champion of the organization. But it's an investment that's well worth making. The other thing I would add is make sure when you've communicated difficult news or a change that has not been received favorably, that you deliver it and you give people a chance to ask questions, but then you also follow up a day or two after to give them a chance. Now they're going to have had a chance to actually process the thing and work through their initial, what is happening, and then have actual legitimate questions they need to know to be able to move forward. And so when you as the leader circle back to them instead of making them come find you, that again communicates, I've thought about what this would be like from your position. And that gains and earns the trust and respect of our employees. Any thoughts you would add on championing the organization or communicating like a champion? If y'all have got those, throw them in the chat. Brett, have you seen anything pop up?
No, it looks like everybody's been paying attention to you instead. You keep leading right into the next thing, and it's really well done. I haven't got any. If you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat box or unmute yourself if you feel like you'd like to just speak real quickly with Ashley and ask her the question yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Okay. Last C is creating a culture of service or servant leadership. Have you ever heard the term command and control leadership? Brett, you're nodding your head yes. Tell me, what have you heard about command and control?
I come from a Navy family. Command and control. Whoever's in the lead is the one in control. If there's some reason to shift the lead, that person's in control. No questions asked by anybody under the person in control. Is that coming up, summing up a little?
I think that's got it. And there are certainly times where command and control need to be in place. When you're talking about a military thing, absolutely, somebody's got to be in control and calling the shots, and it's life or death. So we really don't have time to talk about your questions right this second. I was with the police department earlier this week. Same scenario, right? However, we were talking about even in that scenario, when they're in crisis mode, command and control has to come into play. However, it doesn't have to be in play the rest of the time. You know, when we're in an all hands meeting, or when we're just in the day-to-day operations, it doesn't have to be in command and control mode. And most of us in small businesses, we don't have a need for that. People tend to not respond well to command and control leadership when there's not an imminent need for it in terms of life and safety. We tend to resist it a little bit. And that shop foreman that I was talking about that walked around with the slicked hair and his chains and his hairy chest, he was a command and control leader. That was his style. And nobody respected him and nobody wanted to follow him. So we want to shift our thinking from command and control to a more servant leadership thought process. Servant leadership is going to focus first on the growth and well-being of employees as a means of achieving success for the customers, for the shareholders, for our business as a whole, and also for the employees. Servant leadership is less about just driving profit, but really thinking about, okay, if my first investment is my people, they will help drive the profit. That's the thought process there. Organizations with a servant leadership culture believe that if employees are cared for and put first, that loyalty will result, retention will improve, and customers will be better served. So they're thinking about servant leadership from the standpoint of it is actually beneficial and an investment into our organization. Now, there are some things that are absolute obstacles to servant leadership, and they are these: selfishness, insecurity, and ego. Selfishness is when, as the leader of this organization, I'm only concerned with myself. It's obvious by my love of the perks and the privileges that come with the job. I worked at an organization once. It was a family-run business that had grown and grown and grown and grown and grown, but the family was still there. And I could watch the son of the owner, who was in a pretty prominent leadership position, just really love how he could come and go and never be around and never be available. And there was no accountability for that. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I enjoy the flexibility that comes with running my own business. But if we are driven by the perks and privileges rather than the overall good for our whole team, it will definitely be a breakdown in servant leadership. Jim Senegal, who's the Costco CEO, and companies that big, their CEOs make ridiculous money. I mean, lots of commas, right? He takes like a $350,000 salary every year because he said that's really all he needs. And he didn't need a special office in the corner with all the glass. He pared it down so that he was less focused on how to benefit himself and more on how to benefit the employees of the organization. Insecurity can also be something that gets in the way of our servant leadership. We're afraid to look weak. We're afraid that if we're serving others, that we're going to appear subservient. And so we don't want to do that. And the truth is, when we serve others well, they'll serve us well in return. It's a reciprocal situation. And so we don't really need to be afraid to look weak. In fact, I would say it requires more strength for a business owner to say, you know what? I want to serve my employees more than I want to serve myself. I think that requires far more strength than being like, yep, it's all about me. This thing is mine. And if it sinks or swims or whatever, it's all about me. I think it takes far more strength to be willing to serve the people in the organization instead of our own needs. Ego certainly comes into play in terms of an obstacle for servant leadership. And ego is where I'm like, I'm kind of above serving others. You know, like I worked for other people for a long time and I served them, and now this is my company and I don't have to do that anymore. I've kind of earned the opportunity to be on top and be calling the shots. I've earned these perks and these privileges. Or ego can also look like, I'm going to serve these people, but only so I can be seen serving these people, where our servant leadership is not genuine. It's because somebody told us servant leadership is a good thing. And so we're just doing kind of a checkbox of servant leadership. Y'all, people will see right through that. They will absolutely see right through that. So those are obstacles of true servant leadership. In his book, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, John Maxwell actually gives a test to see where you are in terms of servant leadership. And he asks these 3 questions. When you are put in a position where you are required to serve someone else's needs, do you become impatient? Do you feel resentful? Or do you believe that certain tasks are beneath you? And if the answer to those things are yes, and I will say that depending on the day, some of them might feel like a yes for me, then we know that we're not in a servant leadership mentality. We are still serving ourselves. So those are some good tests. Are you impatient? Are you resentful? Or do you think things are below you whenever you are forced to be in a position to serve someone else's needs? So let's look at the flip side. Those are obstacles. Those are things that get in the way. What does servant leadership actually look like? It's really going to be, by and large, a lot of what we have been talking about today, being very focused on real relationships. Servant leadership is relationship driven. I am showing genuine care because it's genuine, and I actually care about the people. I'm going to know not just the status of projects, but also of my people. I'm not going to know just how the project's coming along, but how are my people doing in the midst of trying to get it all done? And I'm going to infuse every position with importance if I'm a servant leader. I'm also going to be about developing people. We talked earlier about being generous with knowledge and information. I'm going to share that information. I'm going to give you opportunities to grow. I'm going to say, okay, here's the last place you went where you were comfortable. I want you to take a half step further. I'm going to give you one more step past that. And I want you to stretch and I want you to try. And it's okay if you make mistakes. This is where growth happens. And so we're giving people opportunities to grow, and we're preparing them for the next step. Now, many leaders will try to develop people so that they can move up and continue to serve our organization and our customers. A true servant leader is going to develop people maybe for that purpose, but also for ultimately whatever position comes along that's best for them, even if it's not with us. Because I want what's best for the person. That's servant leadership. Leading by example is huge for servant leadership. A servant leader is never going to ask somebody to do something that they aren't willing to do themselves. They're going to always be the one who is willing to get their hands dirty. There's never going to be that mentality of this is below me. When we lead by example, I am telling you, people will follow. So I have served at a church for many years, and there's a hostess and fellowship committee where they're the ones that set everything up and decorate everything and get the food ready. And then the event happens, and then they tear it all down and they clean it all up and they put it all away. And the number of times that I have seen people walk into that environment, say, thank you so much, and leave far outweigh the number of times leaders have walked in and said, hey, we still got dishes to do. Okay, let's go. And what I have seen is the ones that will get their hands dirty and lead by example, and that team will follow. They'll do anything they ask. Anywhere all over that organization, they will do whatever is asked because they know they have a leader who's willing to get their hands dirty. Dwight Eisenhower said, if you pull a string, it will follow you wherever you want. But if you push it, it'll go nowhere at all. And so we want to be leaders that are holding the string with our head looking behind us going, come on, everybody, here's where we're going. I'll lead the way. A servant leader is also going to find their joy, their status, their purpose in helping others instead of just themselves. We're going to absolutely have we're not going to find our status or our joy in our perks and our privilege. We're not going to think things are below us. We're not going to wait for this. We're not going to sulk when our contribution gets overlooked. We're going to be the one that's giving away credit all over the place to our people, that we are building them up. We're happy to see them producing. We're happy to see them excelling. We want them to do well, because if they do well, the organization's doing well. Our ego is the one that would be like, oh yeah, but that was my idea. Yeah, I was the one with that idea. No, we will find our joy in seeing our people succeed. Zig Ziglar said that if you want to help, if you will help others get what they want, they will help you get what you want. We're not talking about servant leadership as a means of manipulation, but the principle is true. It's when I scratch your back, you want to scratch mine. When I walk with you through that difficult time, you want to walk with me through that difficult time. When I help you when you need it, you want to help me in return when I need it. And so when we are serving others well, they're going to serve us well. They're going to serve our organization well. And that makes it better for our whole organization and for our clients, our customers, our shareholders, everybody. So here's what before I do that, anybody want to add anything or ask anything with regard to servant leadership?
Thank you for asking. We have a couple of them in here as well. I would like to just say that leading by example, I think, is extraordinarily important. If there are rules in your organization that you expect everybody to abide by, on the leadership role up here, you also should follow those rules. A lot of times we ask people to do something we're not willing to do, and it's a lack of respect. At least that's been my experience. Just by saying, well, I'm above that, so I can go drink at lunch because I'm an exec, for example. But I expect everybody else to come back and be ready to go to work. And that would be something that I just wanted to add to that. I really think that's huge, that leading by example. Anything you're willing to ask your people to do, you also should be willing to do during those hours at the very least. Do what you want in your spare time. But you know,
I 100% agree. And I would say if you aren't willing to do it, then it's either unnecessary, right? Because sometimes we ask people to run reports and do all sorts of things that then we never look at. Really think about, is it unnecessary? Or if I'm unwilling to do it, just consistency of character, I'm not going to ask other people to do it. I remember when I worked in a very punitive environment. And so we tracked attendance like crazy. We were tracking attendance, we were tracking who's late all the time. And when I first hired in, that was part of my responsibility, is tracking and all of that. And my thought process was, I can't be late. I'm the one that's sending the reports out, telling everybody else that they've been too late, just
absolutely.
that idea of I need to be above reproach. If this is the standard, I need to be there or higher so that people can respect me and respect the authority that I have in the organization.
Ashley, we have one other question. Have you seen situations where people that are new to a higher role go through transitions before they actually become a servant leader? Did they start off one way, is the way I'm interpreting this question, and then all of a sudden finally something happened, or situations where they grew into the role of finally becoming a servant leader?
Oh, I think absolutely. I think that's maybe part of a natural process, where especially young or first time leaders, we're trying to figure out, what does this even mean? What am I supposed to be doing? And so, yeah, I think it's absolutely something that can be developed where, because sometimes we're like, oh, I put on my leader hat. I'm a leader now. People are looking up to me. I got to do all the things. And it's still so us focused that
Mhm.
it takes a minute, I think, to be in that position to go like, wait a minute. If it were not for people who need to be led, there would be no need for a leader. This is actually about them. Let me think about them first instead of me first. I think that's probably a very natural progression for first-time leaders. Absolutely. And I'm in my head, I would never say who, but in my head, I can see a couple of them. I will tell you, I'm one of them that has definitely gone through that process.
That was big of you. Nicely said, Ashley. And thank you for the question. We appreciate your questions. Go ahead and put them in there. At the moment, you are caught up.
Okay, great. Well, I'm just about done. What I wanted to do is give you one more kind of overview screen of the 6 things that we have talked about. And I would encourage you to take a look at those. Often we will sit through a training and then we'll go like, well, cool, that's done. Or we'll say, oh, I need to improve all of those areas. And then in like 12 minutes, we're done working on any of them because it was completely overwhelming. And so my encouragement would be, look at these 6 things and think about, where are you at in your personal leadership journey? Is there one of these areas that you really need to give some attention to? Maybe you're naturally great at genuine care and you're character is consistent. People always know what to expect, but you've been more punitive and more correcting than coaching, or maybe you haven't done a great job of creating a clarity of purpose in your organization, or maybe you've been more command and control than what you meant to be, and you want to make that adjustment. So take just a second, think about which of those needs your attention, and then make a commitment for the next week, 2 weeks, month, how ambitious are you feeling? I'm going to be very intentional to work on that specific thing. And I'm going to look for opportunities to do that. And then if you want like gold stars and bonus points, I would just take a minute as soon as you get off this call, before you eat lunch, before you launch into the next thing, and actually write down some bullet points of how could I put that into action, and extra bonus points. When will I do these things? That way you didn't just spend an hour and a half on a Zoom call, but instead you actually walked away with something actionable that you can put into place right away. The SBDC is so awesome to provide all of these services, these way more than just this training, but it's a great opportunity to be a partner with them. And so anytime you have questions, whether that's about this presentation or the things that we've talked about today, or whether that is other services that you are needing to help grow your business or to know how to be compliant in your business, be sure and reach out to them. They are great resources and just the nicest people. So with that, Brett, I'm going to unshare my screen. That way you can go back to doing what you do.
Well, thank you for doing what you did today for all of us. We really appreciate it. And I'm just going to say thank you again. Foundations of Leadership by Ashley Smalley. This is going to be on our YouTube channel for those that may have joined later, and we're happy to do that and provide all of this at no cost to you. If you have any questions or you want to reach out to the SBDC, you can go to our website at sbdc.nctc.edu and you can get more information. You can schedule an appointment with an advisor, or you can get contact information as well as register for more webinars. And we are, again, grant funded. So I just want to reach out and say thank you to the Small Business Administration, the state of Texas, North Central SBDC Regional Office, as well as North Central Texas College for supporting us. Thank you all for joining us today. We do have a couple of things coming up I want to tell everybody about. On November 28th, we have selecting and setting up QuickBooks with Stacy Kildall. If you haven't had the opportunity to meet Stacy yet, just know that she is an expert in that field, just like Ashley is, who's coming back on the 28th. And that'll be managing your time with Ashley, and followed up again with the way we work on the 30th. Thank you again, Ashley, for joining us for all of this training. And all of this, again, is all for all of you. December 7th, we're also going to continue it with more QuickBooks training with Stacy Kildall, and she'll be finalizing things before Christmas. On the 14th will be the last one we have before the end of the year, and that is customizing forms in QuickBooks. For those of you who really are challenged with that, you're getting two things as we're coming out of November, December. A, being a better leader, and B, keeping your books well. So we hope you'll keep joining us for all these webinars. And thank you again so much today for joining us, Ashley. We appreciate you. And thank you for joining us, all the attendees today. Have an amazing rest of your week.